Hello, my name is Xander. Welcome back to another tutorial. Here we are in the Python Intermediate course. In this tutorial, we turn our attention to Python main functions. So more specifically, we focus on trying to explain the purpose of a commonly used idiom, if name main. So I was pretty amazed at the amount of people who are actually searching for this knowledge, for this information. Just quickly looking at the Google statistics here, we can see that nearly over 300,000 monthly searches for Python main function, Python if name main. So I do hope this has reached you, and hopefully this is going to be useful for you. Of course, there's lots of different resources, explanations found online, and it's definitely worth reading those as well as watching this video. You're going to gain other little snippets of information which might be useful. So, but saying that, hopefully I can help you better understand the code in question here, if name main. So let's get started. One of the benefits of reading through something is you can kind of skip ahead, and normally it has some sort of section so you can see what's going to be covered. So hopefully in this tutorial, by the end of this tutorial, hope that you have a better understanding of the name variable, the special name variable in Python, and when and how Python defines the special name variable. Secondly to that, hopefully by the end of this tutorial, you'll have a general idea of the purpose, the benefits, and how you might go about implementing if name main into your application. So let's first of all talk about an entry point. So you probably already have some experience programming or making a program. So you know that you run the program and that starts a particular point in your program, which can then get your program started and functional. So an entry point then is a point in the program where the execution of the program begins. Many program languages, like for example Visual Basic here, have a special function that it is automatically executed when the system starts to run the program. So in many other languages, this function is usually called main. So here you can see in Visual Basic, when a project contains main, this will start up the object, the main object or the main procedure to start the program. So similar kind of situation here, for example, if you're using Rust. So in Rust, the entry point of the program is the function, the built-in function named main. So just to embellish upon that point again, so for example, if we're using Rust and we set out this main function, as soon as we executed this program, Rust would be looking for that main function in order to start the program, the entry point into the application. So it just happens that Python is a scripting, general purpose, high level, and interpreted programming language. Therefore, with Python, the entry point, in actual fact, is the first instruction found on the file. So you probably don't need a demonstration, but let's just go through this anyway. So for example, if I run this main file here, this script here, then what's obviously going to happen is it's going to print out first and then second and so on. So here I'm just referring to the fact that the entry point here in our file is just the first line of code. Here Python's going to, of course, read this from top to bottom in this fashion at least. And there we go. This type of approach where we start from the top and read down isn't always going to be ideal. And it is going to be useful for us to have a defined starting point for an execution of a program. So in Python, you may have already seen something like this. And this is where we see the if name main situation. So here you can see we have a function here called main, and we have our if name main, and you can see that that is running or starting the main function. So the point here is that if we run this file here with this code, it would run the if name main. When we start the file, it would then fire off the main function and print out hello world. So that's given us some control here, because this might be a different function or might be more functions. So essentially what we're doing here to give us kind of an overview of what's happening before we kind of drill down here is that we're defining here in the if name main what gets started when we start the script, when we execute the script. So let's just quickly go through this. Okay, so we will drill down to name and main, etc. I just wanted to give you kind of the end view, if you like, before we then look a little bit deeper. So here, if I run through this, run main, you can now see that this is just going to run this function here, main, and print hello world. And of course, we can then go ahead and then just select the another function. And when we run this file now, we're just controlling, if you like, what then gets executed when we run the main file. So you may be looking at this and thinking, well, what is the point of this? Because if I just remove this, for example, and then just run this, the outcome is exactly the same, of course. So obviously that's going to need a bit of explanation. So let's now talk a little bit about if name main. To help us understand if name main, I'm going to go ahead and just build this very simple setup here with 3 files. We're going to have the main.py file, which is going to be the script with the entry point into our application. That's going to import the login file, or the login module, and then the login module is also going to import the algorithm library, for example, and that's also going to be imported directly into the main file. So I'll just go ahead and build this. So starting here with the main file, I'm just going to import the login file and then just print main module executed. And then in the login file here, we're going to import algorithms. So I did say also I was going to import algorithm into main. Okay, so I import algorithms from the login file. So I'm going to import algorithm here, and you can see that this is just going to print algorithm library executed. So as you might imagine, if I run the main file now, I now have 3 outputs here: algorithm library executed, login module executed, and main module executed. So you can clearly see that this has all been connected, everything's been imported in. So an interesting point here to make, and it is kind of connected to our main theme here, is that if we were to import algorithms like we have done here on main, and then also here in the login, we also imported the algorithms. So you may have expected algorithm library executed to print out twice because it's been imported twice. Well, in actual fact, if a module has already been imported, it's not going to be loaded again. So you will simply get a reference to the module that has already been imported. So we can take this a step further and have a look at all the modules that have been imported. So let's import sys and then print sys modules keys. That's going to give us a list of all the modules that have been imported. So you can see here algorithms and the login module. Notice that we don't have main, so we haven't directly imported it from other files here. If we did, if we typed in, for example, main here, import main, and run this again, you can see we now have main. However, what might be fairly interesting, which you can connect later, is this dunder main, or the double underscore main name in this list. So now we've got this general idea that behind the scenes, potentially Python is recording the names or generating a name for these files, for these modules, for these libraries. So let's talk a little bit more about that and discuss the special variable name. So when the Python interpreter reads this file, it's going to set a few special variables. One of those is the special name variable. So what we can do in actual fact, let's go ahead and just print out this, if you like, dunder name. Let's print this out. We can now see that the name of this script here is the dunder main, or double underscore main name. So that's the name provided to this script, and that's especially important if we now go back to what this tutorial topic is all about. So this is starting to make a little bit more sense. If name equals main, then we're going to do something. So let's just go back here in our code. So we put that back into our code. We have this function main, and then if name equals main. So this is making more sense now. If the name equals main, so if this script's name is main, then we're going to then run this function. So here we have now the ability, through the fact that Python is automatically naming the script here that we run main as main, we can now utilize that as a way of directing the program to start the main functions or classes of our application. So in this case, if the name is main, which it is, if we run this file, then that means we're going to run this function. So let's just go ahead, and in our login here, we're going to print out the name of this. And then in the algorithm, we'll also just print out the name of the algorithm module here. So let's just go ahead and run this now. And we can now see that we have algorithm library executed, the name of algorithms. So Python is given this, this module, this script, this library, the name algorithm. We have login module executed, and then that's login's provided the name login. And then we go ahead then, and because the name of this main file is actually now main, so let's not complicate this or get confused. I've just called this file main. If I were to change it to anything else, the name of this file that's provided to this script will always be the _ main. Okay, so you can see that that's now run the main function and printed out hello world. Okay, so let's just go ahead now. I'm just going to load up the login file. Let's see what happens. And the interesting thing here is that now I've loaded this individual script here. You can see that it's imported algorithms and run the algorithm library or module. And it's also run the print login module executed. But this time the name has changed. So whereas before, when we import a module, in this case into our main script, you can see that the name provided to login was the name of the import, so algorithms or login. However, if we run the login page directly, you can see that Python is providing the name of this file as main. Apologies when I said the name of this file. It's given the name to this script, or it's assigning, sorry, should I say, that to the name variable, the name of main. So just to summarize this, Python execution mode, naming. So if, for example, we were to load a script, in this case main, then the variable name will be assigned to main. So if we import a module, the variable name will be set to the import name. So in our scenario, that was algorithms and login. So you might still be wondering why that is important, because, for example, if I were just to type in main again, and without using the if name main and running this again, you can see that the outcome is going to be exactly the same here. Everything is exactly the same. So the question kind of still remains, why would we want to use the if name main? So to start to understand and to answer that question, let's just determine that this main file here, it may act as a script, an entry point into the application, and also it may also act in our system, in our application, or for another application as a module that gets imported. So therefore it needs to act differently based upon whether it's an imported module or whether it's the main script we're running as the entry point to our application. So we can control that, of course, now. So if the name is main, that means that this is the kind of entry point, the main executed file that we're running for our application. Therefore, we're going to run the main function. Now, if this script here is imported from another file or to another file, to another module, then we're going to do something else. So we can have a simple else statement here. Maybe we want to run the imported function, for example. So here we would have another function, whatever that might be, imported, that we run instead when it is imported. So this, well, let's just say main is imported, for example. So of course, this is just a simple example. There may be functions here or classes that we want to utilize in other modules of your application. So for example, if I go to login now, and let's go ahead and import the main. Okay, so this should now print out, let's have a look. You can now see that the main is imported. So it's printed out main is imported. So we've now kind of controlled what gets started when we run this file. So if we were to run this file as main, as the main script entry point into our system, we know that we're going to run this function here. Maybe that's going to run and start the application up in a particular way. However, if this gets imported, we're going to run this function, which might be important for some sort of functionality for something else or somewhere else in our application. So to summarize, we've now used if name main to control the execution of our code. We've changed the behavior of our code based upon whether the module or script was imported or whether it was a script and the main entry point to our application. And ultimately, that can help us prevent any unwanted side effects when we're importing other modules into our application. So as a new developer, it kind of starts to force you to put most of your code, or to start thinking about, if you haven't already done so, functions and classes. So we've seen how we've used name, the main name, the special name variable, which contains main, when we execute, to control the execution of our code. Now, to further that, you can see here I've changed the main function here, and we're going to use that to kind of contain the code we want to run. And that then allows us to call other functions within our application, or potentially from imported files. So I do hope that explanation was useful. It'd be good to get any comments. There's a few things that are missing there. Naturally, I didn't want this to go on for too long, but hopefully I covered the main aspects there and given you what is probably a more long-winded explanation than some of the other items you might read on the same subject. As per normal, thank you very much for listening. I do hope it was useful, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial.